Oh, the heavenly voices. There you go. Hello, how's everybody tonight? My name is Chris Quinlan, and there you go. And tonight is a bit of a somber night for a fairly somber week because we lost dear Tony Bennett last week. And of course, this week, I'm just one of thousands adding to dear Sinéad O'Connor passing away passing away. Let's just leave it at that, eh? All right. Now, I want to talk about a thing called Yin and Yang, which you all know about. Duality, the light and the dark, or the dark and the light. What can happen sometimes in music, let me get into it. That's coming across very dramatic. But then, the light, there you go. And what can also happen is that when you're actually dealing with things like this, if you change it up, you know, you could use exactly the same kind of triggers and scales and all this sort of stuff. One of the reasons I have Doris, big ass Doris here, is because of the notes that I can explain when I go to the harmonic part of the evening. But sometimes you just want to get same scale, same bloke, different haircut. And what it is the duality of things. Now, what I'm going to do now is talk about, I'm going to talk about both Tony Bennett and Sinéad O'Connor in a similar kind of way, okay? Essentially, I've got something waiting for Tony Bennett, and I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon so much for Sinéad O'Connor. It's quite amazing. The outpouring of what's been going on with that lady and all that. But basically, I've got my little notes up here. Tony Bennett, born the 3rd of August, 1926, passed away last week, 21st of July, 2023, which was last Friday. Sinéad O'Connor, 8th of December, 1966, 6 years younger than me. And sometime last week, she passed away. Hasn't been disclosed yet, and it's all still a bit new and raw. And there you go. But the thing about the yin and the yang, I could go to my notes and talk about yin and yang and all that. Duality, the light and the dark. I just did that with what is known as the overtone scale, where you can make it sound happy, you can make it sound sad. There's the light and the dark, and we know that for many different things. Just think of good old blues with your good old pentatonic scale, you know, that kind of thing. Major pentatonic, happy, minor pentatonic, bluesy. Away we go, you see. So what goes on with these kinds of things, I've already used 2 bits. And what happens is that with this light and dark, I hope I'm not being overly avant-garde, but you could have what's known in life as a rough diamond. And what that is, you know, you might have someone who's as rough as guts, but underneath they're a big teddy bear. Things like that. So what happens is that with things like the yin and the yang, I often wonder, I couldn't help get it. When I was sitting down to do the Tony Bennett show, and you do your collection, being on a show, you do your collection of photos, you take clips, you do your research, you get everything going. And he was just so loved. But yet he still had a side, you know, that kind of thing. And he was totally open about some of the things he saw when he was a soldier in World War II, when he marched along with Martin Luther King, the dark side of things, but yet he was loved. And the legacy of the man was just incredible, you know. And then you've got Sinéad O'Connor, who nothing compares to you, this amazing voice. And then she did a thing fighting, you know, like exposing what is now just truth and an acknowledgement. And she was pilloried for it. And I saw the footage of her, just the constant booing from Madison Square Garden. And she stood there and took it. Chris Christopherson. What a man. Don't let the bastards get you down. That was his quote. He came back on stage. He was told to get her off stage. He did not. He just whispered in her ear, don't let the bastards get you down. And amazing. And what it is I'd just like to talk about a couple of different things now. With that, with the light and the dark, I've got a little thing here because it is kind of a music show. Hey! And what happens is there's similarities. Now, one of the things about both of Tony Bennett and Sinéad O'Connor's singing was the bel canto style. And I shall read from it from here. Bel canto. Please look it up. We're talking about people like Pavarotti and our own dear Joan Sutherland, who were very famous bel canto singers. Bel canto, Italian for beautiful singing or beautiful song. With several pronounced bel canto, bel canto, with several similar constructions. Bellezze del canto, bellate del canto is a term, I grew up with Italians, I married into an Italian family, I'm pretty good at it now, is a term with several meanings that relate to Italian singing. The phrase was not associated with a school of singing until the middle of the 19th century, when writers in the early 1860s used it nostalgically to describe a manner of singing that had begun to wane around 1830. Nonetheless, neither musical nor general dictionary saw fit to attempt the definition until after 1900. The term remains vague and ambiguous in the 21st century and is often used to evoke a lost singing tradition. However, here's a little list of what it means. Prosodic singing, which is the use of accent and emphasis, matching register and tonal quality of the voice to the emotional content of the words. A highly articulated manner of phrasing based on the insertion of grammatical and rhetorical pauses. A delivery varied by several types of legato and staccato. A liberal application of more than one type of portamento. Messa di voce as a principal source of expression, which was written by Domenico Gori, called it The Soul of Music, The Singer's Preceptor, 1810, Volume 1, page 14. Do the research. I like Wikipedia for this. I know it sometimes is a bit controversial, but it's never let me down. Frequent alteration of tempo through rhythmic rubato and the quickening and slowing of the overall time. The introduction of a wide variety of graces and divisions into both arias and recitatives. Gesture as a powerful tool for enhancing the effect of the vocal delivery. Vibrato, primarily reserved for heightening the expression of certain words and for gracing longer notes. That's something about bel canto. Okay. As distinct from can belto, where you just go, ah! Anyway, light in the dark. You've got to have a laugh. That's why the Irish have wakes and so on. You've got to look at the, you know, all the gifts that these people gave us. You know, they could be next to us. We could have met them. We could have this. The stories are wonderful. But sometimes they're a little bit off to the distance and you think, man, they're gone, you know. And there it is. So I'm talking about the light and the dark. I'm talking about a double bass patch, which it would have been Tony Bennett's big thing with his quartet and all that. And when I go to brushes, you've got to remember that one of the brush greats, I love him, Clayton Cameron. The Living Art of Brushes, I have it up there on Super V, oh no, just on VHS. Sorry, I used to record in Super VHS. Tony Bennett. Bel canto style singing, he swore by it, and so did Sinéad O'Connor. Yin and Yang, okay, the light and the dark. That's one thing that they did together. When I was doing the research for this, there was things that I knew, and there's things that, wow, okay. They both had very similar kinds of, like that. Tony Bennett, Anthony Benedetto, his father died very young, and he had to leave school to help support the family. His father was apparently, by all accounts, a lovely man, but he died when Anthony Benedetto was only 10. In a contrast, Sinead's upbringing was awful. Her mum was basically, well, a Bible-bashing drunk, and I know a bit about that. When World War II came around, Tony Bennett, still Mr. Benedetto, he saw the concentration camps. One of the things that happened after World War II, after he got famous and everything like that, he was part of the marches with Martin Luther King. While he was still, you know, famous. Now with Tony Bennett, he had a real famous stint, and then he hit the rough, and then he did the big comeback. We all know that because there's been obituaries everywhere for both of them, all over the place. But what I want to do is something different. I want to talk about the yin and the yang of these two incredible people and the different kinds of parallels they had, but yet so much was together. And you see, what happened was, one of the things that happened with Tony Bennett was he did the march with Martin Luther King in the 60s. And then a lady by the name of Viola Liuzzo drove him back to the airport. And when he got home, he found out that that very lady was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan. After she dropped him off. When Sinéad O'Connor was in one of the schools, I think we all know if someone's, you know, my age, a bit older and not much younger, but one would remember what's probably best described as by the Blues Brothers, because it was funny. Got to go and see the penguin. You know, 6 of the best and everything else that went with it. And because Sinead brought that up and other things, she was pilloried for it. And there you go. So, very similar. One with the Ku Klux Klan, one with what we all know now as, you know, something that is a real betrayal to many people. There you go. One of the things that happened with Tony Bennett was when he hit the rough. I'll change it up just a little bit here. I go to the singers. When he hit the rough in the 70s, he's quite open about it. He'd developed a bit of a cocaine habit, and the IRS, the taxation, wanted to take his house away. He hadn't paid tax, he was living beyond his means, and he very nearly lost the lot until his sons came in, who were good at management and things, and managed to get him back on track. He said to his sons, "Fellas, I'm lost. Help." With Sinéad, she did lose the lot. All she had left was her voice. There were times when she was maddening, even to her own legion of friends. I remember one thing where I thought, what a voice, you know. And but then I saw a documentary special on George Martin, producer to the Stars, especially the Beatles. And there was a doco on how all the stars were getting together to do a, you know, like an orchestral special tribute to the Beatles and stuff. And Sinéad turned up, hadn't even listened to the cassette that George Martin sent her with all the orchestral, and they did it on the day over a series of hours and stuff like that. And that, to me, was, forgive me, but unprofessional. I mean, when you get a break like that to work with George Martin, you want to do the homework, all that. But at the same time, some of her stuff was incredible, Grammy Awards and all sorts of stuff for their albums and stuff. I'm putting them up there, but what happened was that Madison Square Garden thing, when I saw that was a bit off-putting. But then, just a few years ago, I shared her work with the Chieftains, and it just got me with the Celtic history. It's my heritage. And what it was I started to compare that with who remembers Tony Bennett and K.D. Lang doing the big appearance on the grand final footy show those years ago. And dear Tony Bennett froze. It may have been something to do with what was later diagnosed as Alzheimer's, which took him from us. But he froze, and K.D. Lang had to come in and save him. And then he remembered and managed to get it out. I think a lot of people loved him more for that. Who remembers that? It's a footy show, grand final. Duality, the light and the dark. Now, I'm about there now. And I wanted to talk about that tonight. Okay. One of the things I'm going to add now is the voice of a dear friend of mine, and funnily enough, today, good old Face Chookery's Memories, it's our 4th anniversary of working together, and I asked my friend Magda Williams to say something on behalf of herself and all that. there's a lot of stuff going on. One of the things that's mentioned, and I sort of mentioned it to her, not everyone's cup of tea, but Morrissey actually said some of what's going on is slop. It's just over the top rubbish, sort of thing. And this is why I wanted to do something a little bit different today. And the fact that we've lost two very, very important people inside a week.
In the past day or so since we heard of her passing, so many words have been written about Sinead O'Connor's life and music. It is undeniable that she was very important to many people. Journalism aside, the writings seem to fall into three categories. I love her music and I'm sad she's gone. Fair enough. I met her and she was wonderful and genuine. Also great to know. And here is where she fits in the history of activism, feminism, the story of the Catholic Church, etc., etc. All of which is important to note. But the problem with this kind of writing is it reads like a proto-thesis for somebody's arts degree. And there's just so much of it. It's overwhelming. I mean, sure, yes to all of it. Grieve together and share your thoughts. But also, pull your heads in. Her music and what she shared with us is our business, but her life is not. Her pain and struggle is not fodder for your theorising. All this writing tends to centre the writer. I might agree with Morrissey for once. Where were you then? I don't mean to be cynical at all. I just feel so sad that a deeply creative soul is still being exploited even by those who claim to love her. It reminds me of Britney Spears. When a person shaves their head, they are telling us something very powerful. But what are we really listening to? I listened to every tiny variation in her voice, every lyric. It all moved me to tears then and now. Many who have suffered abuse or abandonment or rejection relate very closely to her voice. And what do we see when we look at her? I saw someone who was so essentially human it was painful to watch, and yet also so beautiful and freeing. The way she moved was childlike and direct, no winking at the hip curve, nothing sly or hidden, only honesty. For a couple of girls growing up in Ballarat, and yes, at a Catholic school, trying to understand and mimic and be with Sinead's energy by learning her songs was something that was really important to me and to a very dear friend of mine whom I would credit with my continuation of creativity in a lot of different ways. So I think I would just like us to listen more to her. Remember what she did for us with thanks, and maybe shut up about it for a while, myself included. I do like this though from Damascena Tanis. May we all be as crazy, feeling, and radically expressed as Sinead.